Why the fuck do I like this movie? I think that's a question many a horror lover has had. At least I know I have. There's an understandable level of guilt associated with indulging in our most base fears depicted on screen. Horror is a genre that's known for not pulling punches as it comes to the assumed sensitivity of its audience. Either you like it or you don't. And for a horror movie, not liking it is almost just as good as loving it. All press is good press applies a lot more heavily to a piece of media in which the whole point of it is to shock and disgust its viewers. As I'm sure you've gleaned from the title, today we're taking a look at Terrifier, one of the most succinct examples of the Grindhouse genre in modern horror media. Now, usually I'm Cole the Clown, but today I am Fart the Clown. That's Art's version, knockoff version from Wish. The internet has frenzied to talk about how intense the series is, with tweets about it reading such as, "My friend passed out and the theater called an ambulance. Highly recommended." Executive producer Steve Barton himself took to social media to give a warning of the movie's content, saying, "Warning. This movie contains scenes of graphic violence and brutal depictions of horror. Viewers who are faint of heart, prone to lightheadedness, or have weak stomachs are advised to take extreme caution. There have already been numerous instances of fainting and vomiting in theaters. For those choosing to continue, you have been warned." I'll go ahead and get my personal biases out of the way, because I think they're totally okay to have, but I just want to openly state them before going ahead and talking about this movie. One, I'm a clown, and a scary one at that, so of course I like Terrifier. Duh. Two, I honestly think Terrifier is tame. And hey, I also think like the human centipede is tame, so that's entirely relative. An important disclaimer to make is that I don't necessarily believe it to be healthy to watch disturbing cinema, or at the least, viewers should be operating with a pretty good sense of common sense and media literacy when doing so. Now, what is Grindhouse? It's defined as an American term for a theater that mainly shows low-budget horror, splatter, and exploitation films for adults. The terminology to describe the genre of movie came about from the theaters that showed them themselves being referred to as grindhouses. Some more popular examples in the genre come from directors like Quentin Tarantino, with movies such as the aptly named 2007 double feature in collaboration with director Robert Rodriguez, Grindhouse, as well as a more popular example of Kill Bill, inspired by grindhouse, kung fu, and exploitation films of the 70s. Rob Zombie mixed his signature hellbilly style with grindhouse to create the Firefly trilogy, with well-known titles like House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, and Three from Hell. Now, a little anecdote about me to contextualize my relationship with grindhouse, disturbing, and general brain-melting horror. I've always been ruined. I went to a one-to-one laptop school. That means every kid in my high school got a laptop, and we got to take them home. Of course, the laptops had firewalls aplenty, but that didn't count for files shared between peers. At the time, I had a pal who was, in my eyes, the coolest thing to hit the town ever when I met them, because I was a big dork. And they offered to share a fucked up movie with me. And so when I took my laptop home that day, I opened the file and watched it, and that file ended up being the movie that is a Serbian film. I was 13, younger than all the other freshmen, and it definitely, to some effect, changed my brain chemistry. A Serbian film is definitely an if you know, you know type thing, involving extreme atrocities committed against children, particularly a very infamous scene involving implied activities against a newborn baby. I won't be watching it again, and I'm glad I'm close to exactly double my lifespan since the first time I saw it. I would theoretically be a good candidate to do a disturbing movie type iceberg type video, but that feels so overdone already. It's more likely I'd be watching individual movies and reviewing them that are on these icebergs, save for the actual illegal and snuff type films. Some of the lesser known ones, a sort of I watched it so you don't have to. Let me know if that's something that you would be interested in me doing in the comments below. And to make this clear, don't go watch this movie. There's a supposed message in it, and it's supposed to be about the level of censorship in Serbian media. Director Alexander, I'm going to butcher this, Radivojevic was quoted in the wiki for the movie as saying, "We have become synonymous with chaos and lunacy. The title is a cynical reference to that image. A Serbian film is also a metaphor for our national cinema. boring, predictable, and altogether unintentionally hilarious, which to a certain extent is commented on and subtly parodied throughout our film. But unfortunately, the message is indeed lost in the unnecessary and terrible execution of its scenes. In contrast, Terrifier doesn't really have a message, unless you want to count the fact that it's an ode to Grindhouse and brainless, gory cinema as its message. And that's part of why I love it. It's not really pretending to be something it's not. Now, contradicting what I just said, I do have quips with Terrifier 2 for doing exactly that, attempting to inject meaning and meaningful character interactions where there kinda isn't, or at least doing so sloppily. And of course, this is an isolated opinion, and it doesn't mean I don't enjoy Terrifier 2. Trust me, I do. I just think it got lost in its high ambitions. But we have art. Art. Art is the message of this film. Terrifier is a pretty good example of a franchise, to me, that's carried entirely by its antagonist. The audience is practically invited not to care about the protagonist and to root for the villain. A lot of that is due to Art's actor, David Howard Thornton, who is actually a trained mime and injects a lot of clowny fun into this role. I'm sure I'll sing his praises for this role further throughout this video. And as much as I could sit here and talk about the lore and behind the scenes and the production and the merit and theory in disturbing cinema, we're gonna kind of do exactly that by just getting into the meat and potatoes of this video. I'm going to be going over the plot and structuring of both Terrifier 1 and 2, as well as his origins in the Ninth Circle / All Hallows Eve. Full spoiler warnings ahead for all three movies, and viewer discretion advised for every bad thing under the sun essentially happening in this movie. My channel is not intended for those under 18, and you have been warned. And as always,
thank you for watching.
So I'm going to only briefly touch on the origins of Art by talking about the Ninth Circle / All Hallows Eve. Reason being, it's not entirely important to Art's lore, but it needs to be talked about to kind of contextualize his origins, of course. I use Art the Clown interchangeably with the movie's title, Terrifier, because, like I said, Art is Terrifier, and this movie wouldn't be what it is without its villain. I would also argue that David Howard Thornton is Art the Clown as well. That's not to shade Mike Giannelli, the actor playing Art in the Ninth Circle / All Hallows Eve, but director Damien Leone is quoted on the wiki for Art the Clown himself as saying, "Mike may as well have been a guy dressed as a clown, whereas David is a clown. If you know him in person, he is a walking cartoon. He is Roger Rabbit in real life, and you'd never believe that he's Art the Clown, but he knows how to flip the switch and bring it to a dark place." So we get it straight from the horse's mouth. David was meant for the role. And that's not Mike's fault. He's not an actor. He was just a personal friend of Leone's that had helped with some makeup tests and therefore got the role. There's also the simple fact that I don't really want to watch it again or give an in-depth analysis for time and enjoyment's sake. I will always watch a movie I'm talking about for review more than once, but this one is peripheral to the rest of Art's lore in my opinion, especially because just how canon this movie is in relation to the rest of it is debated heavily. As a Grindhouse movie, removed from the lore stuff, I wanted to enjoy it, but I didn't like it, unfortunately, just kind of with the disjointed presentation and flow of the movie itself. Even with knowing what I was going into and knowing it was an anthology-type movie, it was still disjointed, and I'll go ahead and tell you exactly what I mean by that by showing it to you right now. The movie opens with the babysitter, Sarah, and her two thoroughly obnoxious charges coming back from trick-or-treating on Halloween night. The boy, Timmy, finds a VHS tape and his score for the night, and they beg her to let them watch it. Apprehensively, she lets the children play the tape. The tape contains 3 short films in one, containing all the original appearances of Art pre what most people know to be Terrifier, the first mainline film released in 2016. While we as the audience are not explicitly told this, the babysitter, the children, and we as the audience are about to view the Ninth Circle, the first ever appearance of Art the Clown, all the way back in 2008. As is also stated on the wiki, Damien Leone had the first idea for Art when he envisioned the very simplistic idea of a woman being followed and harassed by a clown on her bus commute home. This was incorporated into the Ninth Circle, where the short opens with a woman named Casey sitting across from an even scarier iteration of Art the Clown prior to its final visual development. He begins to bother her by honking a horn at her, but then apologizes with a rather thoughtful gift. After shocking her with the roach-infested flower, Art uses the opportunity to grab her by her hand and jab her straight in it with a little sleepy juice, showing his propensity for subduing victims intravenously for the first time. Casey awakens, chained up in a dark room with two other women, about to witness a slew of horrors from monsters to demon SA and baby termination procedures, among other things. These things are really not important to Art's lore, however, besides establishing his connection with demons and the supernatural by working with these demons to secure victims. Our babysitter protagonist comes back into play, ejecting the tape and ordering the kids to bed after all of what they just saw. While waiting for their parents to get back, it's clear she's drawn to the tape and decides to put it back on. Here's where it gets really wonky for me, though. To contextualize this second short film and why it feels so out of place in the middle of this movie is that audience response to the Ninth Circle was so good that it inspired him to make Art the focus of a second movie, aptly named Terrifier. So I made a little visual aid to try and help explain, but this Terrifier is not Terrifier 2016. This Terrifier is the first piece of media named as such in the series and was made in 2011. See, there was a producer named Jesse Baggett, either way, who saw both these short films on YouTube and offered to help Leone make them into a feature-length anthology-style film. He agreed, and thus All Hallows Eve was born. But the 2011 Terrifier short is the third short of 3 in this movie, and the unfortunate middle sequence feels like extreme filler. To briefly summarize, it opens with the woman home alone talking on the phone to a friend about having just moved, and mentioning that her boyfriend, who is an artist, has been painting some weird shit. These paintings aren't shown yet, but we do see a large painting with a sheet draped over it, a little Chekhov's gun treat for later. The power goes out with a large flash of light, and she grows intensely uneasy. Certain she's not alone, her fears are confirmed when she is attacked by a really well-done alien that just crash-landed on her turf, out of nowhere. They do fisticuffs a few times, and she hides under the stairs. She almost got away with it, if it weren't for those meddling phones. As the alien drags her away, she grabs onto the covering on the painting shown earlier, and as it's ripped away, it's revealed to be a painting of Art the Clown. That's it. That's the alien short. You can see why it feels out of place to me, and I'm surely not alone in this feeling from what I've seen discussed. From there, we move back to Sarah, unable to peel herself away, launching us back into the shorts, where we finally arrive at the 2011 Terrifier short. The nameless costume designer focus of this short stops for gas on a dark and lonesome night. The attendant has his hands full, however, because here we have Art first shown to us in the bathroom, having painted some weird shit himself indeed. Another running theme in this movie. Art sure loves finger painting. The attendant shoos him away, and he leaves in heavy air quotes, obviously. While he pumps her gas and they chit-chat, the attendant hears a rustling from inside and leaves to check it out. After waiting a little bit, the unnamed woman goes to check on him. She makes the grisly discovery of Art using a hacksaw to decapitate the man and flees in her car. While on the phone with the police, and in hysterics, understandably so, she sees Art standing on the side of the road with a sign saying circus, meaning he's either magic or fast as fuck, boy. Art has grown even faster and has now reached warp speeds to somehow join her in her car and try to suffocate her with a plastic bag, which causes her to crash, but she's still able to run to a nearby shed and bar the door. That's no problem for Art, though, who pulls a Pennywise in the shower drain adjacent move to get to her, burrowing through the floor to get her. But she bests him temporarily by stabbing him in the eye and fleeing, flagging down some poor schmuck for help. He obliges and they drive away, but Art is both modern and magical, since he pulls up directly next to them in a car to do a drive-by with the mouse tool. As wildly uneven as Art's power scaling is here, I do find it absolutely fucking hilarious that he can both just teleport into cars, but also actively chooses to just drive one to get to someone. The man driving just kinda short-circuits as Art evens himself with their car, hitting the man square in the face with his toolie. The car subsequently crashes, and she's knocked out. She wakes up restrained to a table, smiling for some reason, only to find that Art has removed every single one of her limbs and taken to calligraphy instead of finger painting this time, putting some not very nice words into her skin. That is where the anthology viewing experience ends, launching us back into the situation that frames it all. Sarah's on screen, now upset with all the shit that she just sat there and willingly watched, turning it off in haste. The phone rings, and she receives a call, but the voice belongs to the woman in the last short, and it was the call she made to the police while fleeing. All of a sudden, the TV comes on its own, showing a dark, dank basement. Art comes into view from around a corner, walking closer to the screen as she panics, before eventually reaching the screen and banging on the glass, which immediately reminded me of a similar scene from It. The picture on screen changes to Sarah standing where she is in real life, with Art slowly approaching from behind. When she whips around, he's not there, but is still approaching her on screen. In the nick of time, she manages to eject the tape and smash it before he touches her, stopping him. Moments later, though, she hears the kid scream and runs to the stairwell to see a bloodied up Art, laughing and pointing at the kid's room before disappearing. In a panic, she runs into their room to find them decapitated. Art has also left his artist's signature on the wall, giving the audience their first confirmation of Art's name. Whew. Well, I kept it as abridged as possible, but that is All Hallows Eve. And with how mainstream Terrifier generally has become, it's come to my attention that a lot of people don't know where Art's actual origins lie. With this video being made at the beginning of 2024, we're due to get Terrifier 3 soon, and critics are already up in arms over the teaser, which shows Art dispatching a child. But if they had seen All Hallows Eve, they would know that Leone has already taken it there. Even with my quips for the disjointed nature of All Hallows Eve generally, I can't lie and say I don't really enjoy the third short or the original Terrifier, which serves as a, fun introduction to Art as a new Grindhouse darling. Even if he wasn't played by David Howard Thornton at the time, I think that was probably the closest performance we got out of Mike Giannelli between the two. Shit, I surely can't ever be accused of perfection. I think for a brand new director, Leone did pretty well with successfully setting up a collection of works that set Art on a path to scary superstardom in his debut in Terrifier 2016 with David Howard Thornton playing him. And with every bit of traction that Terrifier got, Leone also gained a bigger budget. And that brings us to everyone's favorite and most people's first introduction to Art the Clown, including mine, Terrifier 2016. Let's get into it. In our cold open, we're shown a woman who has been disfigured during an interview in what is known as a Miles County massacre. After, the reporter who interviewed her, named Monica, is shown in her dressing room chatting on the phone with a friend about how fugly the lady is, which is pretty rude. But she has a little something for her, in the form of matching their mugs. If you have a keen eye, you'll notice she's the same actress for the babysitter in All Hallows Eve, named Katie McGuire. No relation to Bully McGuire, I checked. After this, we meet our two main characters, not for the evening, but for the moment. Dawn is characterized by being a stereotypically bubbly, obnoxious blonde type, while Tara is a bit more somber and responsible, clearly posing her as our final girl. Dawn wants to drive home twisted, but Tara is a real MVP type friend, and insists they sober up at a pizza parlor. Before entering, they make the mistake of simply looking at Art, prompting him to follow them in. Art smiles at the girls, and Dawn flippantly approaches him to take selfies and attempt conversation. Art leaves to go do some more finger painting in the bathroom, and a worker comes and asks them if they're okay and says he'll take care of Art. When he comes to the bathroom to tell him to leave, he's angered by Art's beautiful artwork because he's simply not a fan of finger painting and kicks him out, but even harder. The girls go to leave, but Dawn's tire is conveniently flat. Here, we get a scene that cuts between Tara calling her older sister Victoria to come and get them, and the employee, Ramon, cleaning up after Art's little creative moment. He calls for his boss, Steve, but turns around to see that Art has undertaken sculptural work now and made a Steve-a-lantern. He goes to call for help, but Art interrupts that endeavor with a cleaver to the hand and a knife upside the face. We get back to Dawn and Tara has to use the bathroom while waiting on her sister. They notice a random and conveniently placed for our movie creepy warehouse with an exterminator named Mike outside of it. Dawn says go ask that creepy guy. She approaches to see if there's a bathroom she can use and he lets her in. While she's finding the bathroom, we get Dawn alone in the car when a radio announcement about the murders at the pizza parlor comes on. Before she can even react, Art is there in the car with her anyway. Although, we do hear her door shut, meaning she just had it unlocked and he didn't even need magic to get in. Silly Dawn. Tara is done with her tinkle, and as she moves to find the exit, she hears meowing and follows the sound. There she meets the quote-unquote cat lady, or as many call her, the baby doll lady, because outside of like this one instance of meowing, her doll is a lot more prominent of a thing. She asks Tara if she's a new tenant, and Tara gives the vagrant woman the slip by saying she just needs to go see the landlord. While leaving, she runs into Art in the building for the first time, just absolutely chilling there, frozen in place. He finally lunges at her, and she runs to find an exit, but it's locked for the fumigation. She even sees Mike, but he's listening to some sick tunes, just too loud to hear her. So Art does his classic jab in the neck, and when she awakens, we get what is arguably Terrifier's most infamous scene, where Tara is forced to watch a non-clothed Dawn get sawed in half upside down. Now, something of interest I wanted to note in relation to this scene specifically, in isolation to Art's general accusations of misogyny as a character, which I will be addressing at the end of this video. Art is shown ripping Dawn's panties off before sawing. That's the only thing she was wearing when we entered the scene. Terrifier uses sexualized violence as a form of shock value, yes, but Art is not directly assaulting his victims. And sure, one could argue that him having her generally unclothed is a form of SA within a different form of assault, that being murder. But what I'm saying is he doesn't get sexual gratification for this, or at least not how it's framed to us, and seeming to me. I just thought that was an interesting element to make note of out loud. Art doesn't seem to have any implied sexual attraction to his victims, and while his motives are unknown besides, I'm a clown who kills, whee! I can appreciate that about this villain particularly. Right as Art finishes this, Tara randomly pulls some Hulk strength from her Artussi to break the entire chair and dip. Art moves toward her at a snail's pace and arrives to Tara right as she's freed herself. She greets him by smacking him and stabbing him in the back before running and hiding. As Art seeks her out, she ambushes him and beats his ass with a wooden plank, screaming at him to come get some. However, right when Art looks visibly defeated, he pulls out his secret mouse tool and blasts Tara in her thigh, giving her a few minutes of chill contemplation before finishing the job. In this, we have the rare but successful subversion of the final girl trope, snuffing Tara out fairly soon into the movie and snuffing out hope for the audience. Too little too late, her sister Victoria finally arrives to the warehouse and calls Tara to see where she is. Her call is forwarded to her new secretary, Art, who heard Tara's phone go off and kindly took down the message that Victoria is here. The exterminator, Mike, sees Victoria outside and calls his boss to notify him of all the weird happenings that evening, but before he can say too much, Art bonks him on the head and ends the call early, bonking his phone a bit as well. We get the baby doll lady again going to her crib to find her baby Emily missing. She goes searching for it, only to find Art cradling the doll. She attempts to appeal to whatever human decency may be lurking in him, and he even sucks his thumb while she reaches out and touches him. While this was happening though, Victoria found her way in through, I don't know, some fucking garage. I still haven't got the slightest idea what this place is generally. She hears a scream and assuming it's Tara or Dawn, follows the sound. She sees Tara lying face down on the floor and runs to her sister to call for help, but as she goes to do so, she hears the baby doll lady go, "Help me," in a darkened corner and looks over to see her scalped and debreasted. Looking down, she sees that Tara is actually Art, naked and wearing the baby doll lady's assets for himself. She runs away, finding a closet to hide in, while Art comes to find her, doing his best Buffalo Bill impression. He seems to have the instincts of a keenly trained narc dog, focusing in on the closet, us seeing it from her peephole POV as he creeps closer. But he's interrupted by the honk of a vehicle, as Mike's unimportant side character coworker Will had already arrived and is looking for Mike. He looks for him a bit and is about to leave, but in the nick of time to be killed, remembers a key under the mat and enters the building. But he doesn't get far because Art meets him there to fully decapitate him as well. While he's busy greeting new guests, Victoria leaves a closet to make a run for it, but runs into Art circling around on a trike in the garage. She weaves between cars to try and hide, but Art still finds her and uses his signature plastic bag move on her head. She rips a hole in it as you do and runs, but not before stabbing Art and getting told off in his special mime way for it. She runs straight into Tara's death and sees Art has now taken to set design, as if he wasn't talented enough with painting and sculptural work. She sees Tara doing some advertising for the local circus too, complete with the sign from the last short in All Hallows Eve. Sobbing loudly and facing away from the door, as you do in a horror movie, Art comes to do battle once more and gets her a good few times with the scalpel cat o' nine tails, but Mike comes to save the day by doinking Art in his noggin with his fumigation tank. He and Victoria run together and call the police, who advise them to stay right where they are till they arrive. Mike refuses, telling the dispatcher they're going to try and find a way out before hanging up. They run to find an exit, and Mike fumbles hard, somehow not having the key he used to lock everything up with. In his stupor, Art comes and returns the favor with the fumigation tank, finishing Mike off with some stomps with the clown boot. Somehow, Victoria slams the lock off the door with a simple wooden beam, but Art begins choking her again. She somehow gets a hold of one of his scalpels again and plants it right in its eye before pushing herself through the double doors to escape. While taking notes, I literally had to rewind this part multiple times to understand what I was seeing. After she gets through those doors, she runs outside, but then enters through a new door back inside instead of, I don't know, just fleeing to her car. Once back inside, Art terrorizes her some more with a horn through the doors, but disappears as police sirens grow in the background. Thinking the coast is clear, Victoria looks through the crack in the doors to see Art gearing up to smash through the doors in the extermination truck, and then doing so. We cut to the police arriving, but when they do, we see Art hunched over her, eating her face. As they draw their weapons and yell at him to stop, Art takes matters into his own hands with his secret mouse tool for later again. Art and his victims are transported to the coroner's office, where the coroner experiences supernatural electricity issues and screaming phones after unzipping Art's body bag. Art sits up, choking the coroner. We cut to a hospital where a doctor releases a patient and tells her good luck on her interview tomorrow. As I'm sure we can guess, this is Victoria and her theoretically tasty face. And that, folks, is the synopsis of the first mainline Terrifier movie. I would go ahead and give my thoughts on it now, but I think I'm going to go ahead and just do that at the end and compare and contrast a bit in my conclusion. Terrifier 2 released in 2022 and picks up very close to where we left off, with Art in the coroner in the morgue. He was seen choking the coroner in Terrifier 2016, and here it's confirmed that Art actually ends him with a hammer. He takes the coroner's eye for himself, since healthcare is expensive and you take what you can get, and heads to the laundromat to clean up. At the laundromat, with the best damn soap I've ever seen, and while catching up on news, Art meets his new bestie. It was fated, of course, since they have similar makeup and vibes. Just like Art, the pale little girl, as she is known and credited, has a gnarly case of IBS and also prefers to deal with it anywhere but in the toilet bowl. A man who fell asleep waiting on his load to be finished wakes up and sees Art playing patty cake entirely alone, indicating the girl is a figment of Art's imagination. Art kindly cleans up their mess with the mop, also using it to end the man. Dual purpose. 1 year later, we meet our new protagonists, the first ones with attempted substance. A teenage sibling duo, Sienna and Jonathan Shaw, are readying themselves for Halloween. Sienna is a cosplayer, putting some finishing touches on her angel wings for her costume, which happened to be a replication of one of her father's drawings. Artwork clearly being a large theme of these movies, Sienna's father is an artist who died of a brain tumor which caused him to get drunk and crash his car, but not before losing his shit and drawing hella sick sketches of Art who'd he'd seen in dreams, just like the artist's partner in the Alien short in All Hallows Eve. Little brother Jonathan is an infantilized teenager with a hard-on for serial killers, being that he wants to go as Art for Halloween, now a much more known entity in the series universe after the events of the first movie. That same evening, we get more of Art entering people's dreams like Freddy Krueger, in which Sienna falls asleep to a clown-themed advertisement and dreams of herself being in that advertisement. Everything goes south as Art arrives to the clown cafe to use a machine gun on the audience and a new tool in his arsenal, a freaking flamethrower. As much as I genuinely love the sequence and the direction design of the scene, it does mark one of the first points of needless runtime and dragging scenes in this movie. Quality my videos clearly embody already, also only on my second video ever. Earlier in the movie, we got a Chekhov's gun with Sienna's dagger that her father gifted her, that she intends to use in the costume. The dagger magically appears in the dream, and she uses it as a shield for the flames. In real life, a fire breaks out in her room, but it's unclear as to whether that's actually due to candles she had lit earlier or the dream. However, even as the angel wings burn, the dagger is unscathed, hinting at magical properties to the dagger itself. Sienna wakes up and is ripped a new one by her battle axe mother and goes to school the next day. Everyone at Sienna's school is abuzz with the news of what Victoria did when she attacked the newscaster in the first Terrifier, and Sienna has a panic attack when hearing and thinking about it. We're introduced to her two terribly fated pals, Allie and Brooke, who comfort her. Back at his school, Jonathan is with some of his miscreant friends who find a dead possum and start playing with it. He dips out, subverting our expectations of him being a little freak, but runs into Art and the pale girl in the hallway where they play with it to his horror. But they insist he plays with it too and pass it like a hot potato right when the principal runs up on his shit to catch him in the act of holding the dead possum. She reports it to Barbara, confirming her fears that he's becoming the next massacre committer. After school, Sienna heads down to a costume shop to replace the burnt wings and meets Art in the flesh for the first time. The sunglasses trying on scene is one of the most well-known and regarded scenes from Terrifier 2 with well-placed comedic timing. After getting her wings, she goes to pay but has misplaced her purse when she realizes that Art's a pretty good guy and has found it for her. She leaves and Art locks up for the clerk and then also helps him clock out by beheading him. Once home, Sienna learns about the trouble that her brother is in, and they have a heart-to-heart about why he's so obsessed with Art. He confides that he has their father's sketchbook, with all his sketches and newspaper clippings of news related to the Miles County massacre. For some reason, though, one of the newspaper clippings is of a little girl who was found dead in a makeup trailer at a local carnival, also mentioning that she was the daughter of circus performers. She is directly named as Emily Crane, interestingly, Emily being the same name as the baby doll in the first movie. Without getting too deep into fan theory back and forth bullshit, there is a lot of debate as to how Sienna's dad would know that that was Art's doing unless Art is Sienna's dad, as well as why the baby doll lady had a baby doll with the same name as the girl in the newspaper clippings, who also looks just like the pale little girl Art now plays with. It's thought that the baby doll lady is her mother, stricken by grief. A lot of people argue these theories in forums, and I don't necessarily think they're wrong or dumb for doing so. I think they're reasonable conclusions to make, honestly. I just personally think this is more likely to be a case of implied powers and/or sloppy lore placement. It's unlikely that Art is Sienna's father, as he burned up in that crash, and Art has no burnt qualities to him, and we see him in his birthday suit twice. Since Art is implied to have been driving him crazy, either causing or just merely accelerating his brain tumor, I think it's reasonable to say that he could have received psychic visions of his victims, even once unknown by the public at large to be works of art, and connected the dots with her news article. The idea that the Emily that is implied to be the pale little girl is also the baby doll proxy with the doll lady as her grieving mother is definitely a bit less far-fetched in my personal opinion. Either way, Leone has said that Terrifier 3 will seek to answer a good bit of the questions that the lore in 2 presented, and I'll be keen to see if those are further expounded upon. He has stated the intention to keep Sienna as a character moving forward at the least. Back to the plot, Sienna gets into costume and leaves to meet her friends at a club for teens, I guess, and we cut to her friend Allie, who is handing out candy to trick-or-treaters in her mother's place. Art comes up and bothers her, but indicates he'll leave if she gives him some candy. Regardless, Art later breaks in and shows that he truly has no regard for keeping good on his end of promises, and that nothing can be done to avoid his wrath, even full compliance. Here, we get one of Art's second most infamous kill scenes, Leone's attempt to top the hacksawing of Dawn in Terrifier 2016. He removes Allie's skin for her, and then comes back to pour both bleach and salt on the wounds to sterilize them for her. While they're playing doctor, Allie's mom gets back home to see the scene and chides Art for his terrible bedside manner. We learn in a later scene that Art uses her head as a candy bowl for trick-or-treaters, but he leaves the little kids alone this time, which is fairly chill vibes of him. We see Sienna arrive at the club to meet up with Brooke and Brooke's boyfriend, and cut back to Jonathan arguing with his mother about the possum incident. She tears up the sketchbook and also smacks him after he calls her a bitch. He runs away, and shortly thereafter, Barbara enters their garage to find her car vandalized with shaving cream, toilet paper, and more naughty words. Also, the pale little girl is now all over the place, both scaring Jonathan into running back home and Sienna while on the dance floor. Right around now, it's also revealed that Sienna's genius bestie drugged her ass with Molly, because that's just what friends are for. While Jonathan is running back home, we're shown Barbara cleaning off the car, wiping off shaving cream to reveal Art inside of her car, immediately blasting her right in the face with a cute little shotgun. Jonathan arrives home to find Art playing a feminine role once again, wearing an apron with his faceless mother posed at the dinner table. He flees in terror as Art tries to feed mashed potatoes into her face hole, but he catches up and gives him another dose of his famous sleepy juice. Sienna, having freaked out about seeing the pale little girl, has Brooke and her boyfriend driving her home when she receives a call from the pale little girl doing a sick voice impression of Jonathan, saying he's trapped at the abandoned fairgrounds and needs her help. They rush there, Sienna running into a haunted house type attraction, very aptly named, while Brooke and her boyfriend wait in the car. While Sienna is gone, Brooke starts gossiping to her man, like the disposable friend-side character she is, about the circumstances surrounding Sienna's dad, but this is cut short because he's got to drain the snake. While outside of the car doing so, Art takes this moment to go ahead and remove his dongler for free, something a good bit of my gal pals would love to have happen for free.
Say it louder, Optimus Prime.
Brooke flees the scene, following Sienna into the haunt and being trapped in the bathroom by Art, who does everything from give her a makeover, bludgeon her, as well as eat her heart out. Sienna witnesses this, and Jonathan happens to show up as well at the same time. Here begins one of my least favorite fight sequences, and I think one of my main turnoffs to Terrifier 2. There are no stakes as Sienna and Jonathan continuously and miraculously evade Art to the point of it being teleprompted to us that there are no mortal stakes here. Sienna especially has been built up to be a likable and almost prophetic final girl character with all the magical sword dreams and her dad's drawing of her in this costume holding a demon's decapitated head. The audience can glean this already, rendering all this back and forth useless and overbearing time-wise. It basically goes like this. Sienna tells Jonathan to run. She fights with Art. He knocks her out. She wakes up. Art is actively attacking Jonathan with a cat of nine tails thingy-mabob when she does. She fights Art off of him with his own weapons, and they keep doing things that should kill him fully, but he keeps getting up. Art finally KOs Jonathan and stabs Sienna with her own sword, pushing her into this random hell pit in the ground and launching her into the clown cafe again, but this time where she is trapped via tentacle in a magician's water tank. She bangs on the glass for a mind-boggling length of time and is about to die when the sword randomly starts glowing in the above-ground world, and her mortal wound just vampire heals itself, and she wakes up in her body with Art and Jonathan again. When she's awake, she sees Art gnawing on Jonathan's ankles because he's a silly little ankle biter. She surprised ninja attacks Art, decapitating him fully with a dagger, and he smiles and welcomes it because he thinks it's kind of a respectable vibe. Her and Jonathan hug it out and are interrupted by the pale little girl coming by to collect her loved one's remains, hissing at them like the stereotype of a 2010s rolling bookback kid in the process. Whew. I not only described it minimally, but I also sped it up, both for time's sake and comedic effect, and that still felt just as long as it did when I was watching it. Terrifier 2 clocks in at 2 hours and 18 minutes, which unfortunately wasn't helpful or necessary to its cause. From there, it ends with the siblings hugging it out again. But wait, there's more! We get a mid-credit sequence with Victoria, institutionalized, who is not exactly having a bodacious time. She vomits and smears the words Art plus Vicky on the walls in her own blood, surrounded by a heart, seemingly smitten by him now too. A nurse comes in and we see her begin to give birth to a bouncing baby Art's head. Aww. And that, my friends, is Terrifier 2 in all its bloody gutsy glory. Let's talk about it, shall we? So why am I talking about these movies? Well, obviously, like I stated earlier, my bias is towards horror. I love it in all its glorious forms. And horror, like any media, has always had some sort of messaging to it, using its tales to convey something symbolically. In 2024, more than ever, elevated horror has reached peak popularity. Viewers are yearning for more horror with fleshed-out lore, deep and well-wrought messages, and empathetic characters, whether final person or foe. But I think Terrifier and Grindhouse as an entirety serves as kind of an anti-messaging within horror. Not everything has to have a reasoning, and not every boogeyman can be reasoned with the right combination of words and actions for or against them. Art leaves the little children who pick from Allie's mother's head bowl alone, but he kills a dude in the laundromat for looking at him generally. I love intellectualized horror like Midsummer and The Witch, but I'm a clown of duality and love the other side of things too, where horror exists for the sake of horror. Now, my quips with Terrifier 2 aren't for attempting to add lore generally, or adding Sienna as an attempted likable, recurring protagonist. It's just that, like I said, it was done so sloppily, and the pacing and runtime combined with that is really unfortunate. I think there is a balance to be had there between the lore and the senseless gore. Hell, I'd love to see more movies that balance these two qualities well, but like I said, pacing, runtime, sloppy lore inclusion all comes together to create a perfect storm of, it was alright. And like I said, since I'm not mad about lore inclusion generally, I'm excited to see how they work that into Terrifier 3 and explain a little more about what was shown to us in Terrifier 2, as Damien Leone has explicitly said would be the case. I honestly have very few notes for the first Terrifier, other than I think it's a good mainstream introduction to art. It's a good, simple Grindhouse flick. And, you know, other than that, it does have some spotty dialogue choices with the dumbest female protagonist of all time, and that's not the character's fault for being written like that, but they were written to be hated by all. As common and unfortunately expected of B-movies as it is, it would feel remiss not to mention the fact that a lot of people do find Art the Clown to be misogynistic because he's shown to target women and only take out men that are in his way. They're collateral damage. And I don't think that critique is inherently wrong. I think it's become a long-running and expected trope of exploitative horror that I would indeed like to see fixed. I think it can definitely be used flagrantly and without bad intention behind it per se. But to fix that, I would definitely like to see a more balanced ratio of who art targets explicitly going forward. I don't want to see less of anyone taken out in a slasher film. I want to see more of it, unless it's like kids, and just do it tastefully and off screen. I don't want to see it. Because shit, it is absolutely effective at invoking terror since women and children are believed to be the most vulnerable in our society, even if I don't fully believe that to be true based on the agency that grown women have. But just like with media that depicts the human form, I don't want less bazongas, I want more donglers hanging alongside them, you know? But that's because I'm a lord bisexual. Back on track though, Terrifier 2 runs a bit awry with its attempt to prop up a protagonist so suddenly and heavily, which is kind of antithetical to the no hopes theming of Grindhouse cinema in my opinion. But I do think that can be saved if the next one is taken in the right direction with it. All in all, I do try and be fair with my opinions, just give what I truly thought, and understand that A, their opinions, they're subjective, B, they're mine and mine alone, and C, I'm just some chud on the internet giving opinions with no professional film opinion critic credentials. But I always want to be honest with what didn't work for me, whether that's common opinion or uncommon and controversial. That all said, I still respect the hell out of Damien Leone for creating what he has here with art, pumping some new life into the Grindhouse genre and a new clown into the Scary Clown Hall of Fame. I'm very excited to see and give my thoughts on Terrifier 3 when it's out, and am excited to see art having some holly, jolly, gay, merry, and bright Christmas fun. Because, yeah, it is a Christmas movie, apparently. For my next video, I may round out talking about clowns with a smash or pass video on scary clowns, as my tattoo artist has done on their Instagram story, so go check them out, or go follow me there. I also have more videos on various horror movies and non-movies planned, including American Mary and the topic of body modification in body horror, and Junji Ito's manga adaptation of Frankenstein, and comparing and contrasting it with its original text, so if either of those things interest you, definitely go sub. If you like this video, go ahead and smash that like button like your finger is a pie going into a clown's face. And let me know in the comments if there are any horror media that you'd like to see me cover. Tell me if you loved it or even if you hated it. I'm always open to constructive criticism. I may take the criticism and shove it up my own ass. Now back to that little question I posed at the beginning of this video. Why do I like this movie? Well, maybe it's because I'm a clown. Maybe it's just because I'm messed up by a Serbian film. Or maybe, like for many people, Terrifier and other Grindhouse films are a safe way to feel and explore those fears that we all have. Those fears of a force that cannot be stopped or reckoned with, just taken to the extremes of hopelessness. Now, why do you like this movie? I can't tell you that. That's really for you to decide. But what I do know is if you like this type of movie, we can put it on and watch it and be messed up together.
Forever.